Aside from Shylock, what are the other references to Jews, the Jewish people, that we find in Shakespeare, and how are those various references interpreted?
There's kind of a considerable sprinkling, if you like, of references to Jews in Shakespeare. We don't otherwise have Jewish characters, but you get a lot of figurative rhetorical references to the Jews, and you find those through his career. So there's a very early play called Two Gentlemen of Verona, where a comic character is speaking to the audience, and he's trying to say that something was incredibly sad. And he says, I mean, forgive me, these references aren't pleasant, but he says, a Jew would have wept. And that's based on the proverbial idea that Jews were hard-hearted. In the play Macbeth, which has scenes of witchcraft, which have lots of gruesome and kind of body part-based ingredients, one of the witches described using liver of blaspheming Jew. And that's based on, I think, the idea, first of all, blaspheming Jew, that's the idea that anybody who's not a Christian is blasphemous. And it's kind of in a list of exotic and disturbing ingredients. You also occasionally get characters saying, you know, if such and such isn't true, or such and such is true, or I'm a Jew. And all these figures of speech are really about Jews as kind of avatars of difference. Jews as being very, very unlike Christian characters or sort of everyday English people at the time. Very few of these claims actually make any meaningful, positive claims about what Jewish people are like. And again, this is because most English people at the time are really, really ignorant about Jews. They have not met many Jews. Their ideas of what Jewish people are like are derived from fiction and history. In The Merchant of Venice, we mentioned there's a kind of pound of flesh motif, the idea that Shylock wants a pound of flesh when his bond with Antonio is forfeited. That comes from a piece of early medieval folklore. There's a kind of folklore idea of the Jewish person trying to get a pound of the Christian flesh, which is repeated through folk tales. And that's sort of the level of Christian Gentile knowledge of Jews at the time. It's from really anti-Semitic, libelous stuff in history. It's not based on knowing Jewish people at all.
No references to the Jewish Bible, to the Old Testament? No references that hark back to that have some kind of motif that ties to that in Shakespeare?
You get that in The Merchant of Venice. There's a discussion of money lending, and Shylock makes the Jewish scriptural case for it being okay. Something that's really fascinating there is that Shakespeare lent money, and his father had actually been prosecuted for lending money with interest, usury, which was illegal. So I always think it's interesting that he has he has Shylock do on stage something that his father had done. So there are small references, but it's seen through the kind of Christian lens.
Okay. And nothing that touches on blood libels, which coincidentally started in England. Doesn't come up in any of Shakespeare's works.
You get small references that are kind of in the tenor of that. The anti-Semitism that runs through The Merchant of Venice and is occasionally mentioned in the history plays, although it doesn't always overtly refer to the blood libel, that's what kind of underscores the kind of tenor of those remarks, the idea of the blood libel and that Jews are bloodthirsty. He's less overt than, say, Marlowe is.
Okay. Marlowe is in your face.
Oh, yeah. And Marlowe, for example, is also like that about Islam. Marlowe burns the Quran on stage.